Good day, everyone. I am, and welcome to I Am Vibes. The freedom and accountability of the human person. A human person has the rational principle that enables him or her to reach an intimate and deep knowledge of all existing things. He or she is capacitated for a fundamental and profound relationship with all of created reality. He or she can have control on his or her own actions and brings life to both good and bad consequences depending on his or her deeds. The human person has freedom that's rooted in his or her intellect and will. He or she has the power to act or not to act. He or she has the power to shape his or her own life, mature in goodness, and gain extraordinary experiences, transcendence, and perfection. The human person can choose to do good or evil, to grow in perfection or to sin because a human person's acts are free. He or she is worthy of praise or blame. Now, before we're going to start with our lesson, let us have the situation first. Imagine that you were chosen to receive a presidential award for this school year because of an exemplary task you have had performed. The president asked you to choose just one of the following prizes. A. A house and lot for your family. B. A four-year college educational scholarship at any school in the Philippines. Or C. A total of 500,000 pesos worth of latest gadgets, laptop, school supplies, and appliances. Now, the question here is, which prize are you going to choose? And then, what factors made you come up with that decision? Sir Isaac Newton in 1600, a natural philosopher who is widely recognized as one of the most influential scientists of all time, and as a key figure in the scientific revolution, presented the third law of motion, which basically states that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. It means to say that if object A exerts a force on object B, then object B also exerts an equal and opposite force on object A. Newton's third law of motion philosophically explains the life upbringings to both good and bad consequences, depending on human person's actions. Sometimes the consequences are predictable, though sometimes not. We just have to trust that if we make the right choices, good consequences will follow. Now, this lesson will bring us further on the understanding of freedom of choice and accountability of the choices we have made. The human person's freedom enables him or her to choose which action will be performed. On the other hand, accountability refers to the obligation of an organization or individual for a set of duties that one is performed that issue rewards or praises or punishments. We deserve praise or reward for choosing an action we know to be good, and we deserve blame or punishment for choosing to do an action we know to be bad. A person who is accountable may be called upon to answer and account for outcomes. Now let us have a short comparison of the word accountability and responsibility. Accountability is the duty to govern or manage, while responsibility is the duty to complete the work. When a work or product or decision fails, both those who are accountable and responsible are to blame. The accountable individual has a greater blame and may take all the blame if they so choose. For example, if a creative director assigns a design to an associate designer that ends up on disappointing the client, it would be common for the creative director to take the blame as they should have managed the quality of work outputs. It is poor practice for leaders to attempt to avoid accountability by assigning all blame to responsible individuals. Now let us have accountability versus authority. When I say authority, it always implies accountability. Authority is the power or right to direct, control, and command. It is a system that grants authority without accountability is essentially broken. For example, a corporate executive who is protected from accountability by the terms of their contract may have little incentive to make decisions that are in the best interest of stakeholders. There are 4 degrees of accountability, namely, the degree of difficulty or pressure, the intensity of the wrongdoing, the degree of one's involvement, and the degree of knowledge. Let's talk about the degree of difficulty or pressure. The greater is the degree of difficulty or pressure, the lesser is the degree of accountability. Or the lesser the degree of difficulty or pressure, the greater the degree of accountability. Let's say, for instance, a person who steals a loaf of bread to feed his starving family has a lesser degree of accountability compared to a person who steals fortunes just to amuse himself. Second is the intensity of the wrongdoing. The extent or gravity of the injury done to a person as a consequence of the wrongful action, the greater is the intensity of the wrongdoing, or the greater is the injury, or the greater is the degree of accountability. Or, the lesser is the intensity of the wrongdoing, is the lesser is the degree of accountability. For example, stealing 50 pesos from a beggar has a greater degree of accountability compared to stealing 1,000 pesos from a billionaire. Or, stealing a loaf of bread from a bakery has a lesser degree of accountability compared to stealing it from a person who just bought it for his own starving family. Third is a degree of one's involvement. It involves a collective action. The greater the degree of involvement, the greater is the degree of accountability. Or the lesser the degree of involvement, the lesser is the degree of accountability. For example, the person who intentionally and knowingly assists a murderer in locating the whereabouts of his victim is accountable for the eventual death of the victim, but to lesser degree compared to a murderer who kills the victim himself. Then lastly, we have the degree of knowledge. The degree of one's knowledge of the wrongfulness of an action and relevant facts, the more accountable one is. Or, the less knowledgeable one is about the wrongfulness of an action and relevant facts, the less accountable one is. Say, for example, doing the same kind of crime, the law gives a lesser degree of punishment to a minor compared to a normal adult. And so, we have to realize that all actions have consequences. Actions are a result of your thinking, beliefs, and several other things deciding your behavior and relationships. All the human person's ideas and ideals like love, truth, reality, knowledge, wisdom, compassion, self, and etc. are linked unknowingly or knowingly with each action and also its consequences. In other words, nothing is in our hands except choices and responses, which we can use with wisdom born out of experience. Further philosophical explanations are as follows. We have Aristotle, the power of volition. When you say volition, it is the faculty or power of using one's will. If there were no intellect, there would be no will. The will of humanity is an instrument of free choice. It is within the power of everyone to be good or bad, worthy or worthless. The human person's will is an instrument of free choice. Reason, will, and action derives each other. For example, attending class is a student's responsibility. Should a student cut class, then he or she is responsible for the consequences of his actions. As a result, he or she must be held responsible for any accident or failure in grades that will befall on him or her. The student may regret that he or she had done, but all the regrets in the world will not call it back. The point is, the student should not have cut class in the first instance. When the matter is sifted down, the happiness of every human being's soul is in his own hands, to preserve and develop or to cast away. Second, we have Thomas Aquinas, love is freedom. Saint Thomas Aquinas considers man as a moral agent because human persons have a conscience. Whether choose to be good or evil becomes a great responsibility. Saint Thomas wisely chose and proposed love rather than law to bring about the transformation of humanity. For love is in the consonance with humanity's free nature, for law commands and complete, love only calls and invites. Saint Thomas emphasizes the freedom of humanity, but chooses love in governing humanity's life. Since God is love, then love is the guiding principle of humanity toward his self-perception and happiness, which is his ultimate destiny. Next, we have Jean-Paul Sartre, individual freedom. Sartre's existentialism stems from the principle existence precedes essence. The person is provided with a supreme opportunity to give meaning to one's life. In the course of giving meaning to one's life, one fills the world with meaning. Freedom is, therefore, the very core and the door to authentic existence. Authentic existence is realized only in deeds that are committed alone in absolute freedom and responsibility, and which, therefore, the character is true creation. Sartre emphasizes the importance of free individual choice, regardless of the power of the other people to influence and coerce our desires, beliefs, and decisions. To be human, to be conscious, is to be free to imagine, free to choose, and be responsible for one's life. Next, we have Thomas Hobbes' theory of social contract. A law of nature is a precept of general rule established by reason, by which a person is forbidden to do that which is destructive of his life or takes away the means of preserving the same, and to omit that by which he thinks it may be best preserved. Hobbes concludes that in order to preserve our lives, we should first seek peace as a law of nature. We should mutually divest ourselves of certain rights, which is a contract. We should be willing like others. We should lay down the rights to all things. And we should be contented with so much liberty against other people as we should allow other people to go against themselves. We have last, Jean-Jacques Rousseau versus Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes thinks that to end continuous and self-destructive conditions of warfare, humanity founded the state with the sovereign power of control by means of mutual consent. On the other hand, Rousseau believes that a human being is born free and good. Now, he is in chains and has become bad due to evil influences of society, civilization, and progress that result to dissension, conflict, fraud, and deceit. Every choice we make in life has a consequence. Some of those consequences are minor, some are major. It pays to consider your choices well. Each decision you make in life brings with it certain outcomes. If you make better decisions, you will get better outcomes. That is a simple truth, and we are the sum of the choices we have made. By being responsible for our own lives and being accountable for the decisions we have made, we can change our lives for the better. Making choices involves various options. It should be realized from the beginning that some things will eventually be given up in exchange for another. Before coming up with a final decision, it is important to first weigh the contributions and consequences that may arise upon choosing a certain option. Nevertheless, the effects of all choices result in your decision making should be ready to face. Newton's third law of action and reaction gives us an incredible insight into the balance and battle between the positive and negative in our life. The takeaway lesson from this law is that we should always look for ways to increase our good actions and habits. As you add more and more positive aspects to your life, the negatives will start to decrease without you even focusing on them. That is the magic of this natural law. If you focus on increasing the positives, you are forcing a decrease in the negatives. I think it's about time to think and reflect the answer of those questions. Exercising prudence in choices. We all have those bad habits that just frustrate us from time to time. It could be procrastination, laziness, unhealthy substance addictions, self-criticism, gossiping, overeating, social media addiction, or anything else that we feel holds us back. The more of them that we hold onto, the less time and opportunities we will have available to move over the positive side of the scale. By being responsible for our own lives and being accountable for the decisions we've made, we can change our lives for the better. We can make the choices to be happy and make a decision to react positively to all of life's situations. We can take control and be a victor and not a victim. Prudence is an act of making good judgment that allows a person to avoid risks. It is important to be prudent at all times to prevent any harm that a decision may cause. In making a decision, it is critical to determine the adverse effects beforehand to avoid greater risk. Exercising prudence in choice implies that one has already criticized all available options and a well thought of choice has been made. The skills required to be prudent are decision making skills. Taking the time to learn good decision making skills will help you become a more prudent person. Learning decision making skills provides the opportunity to increase positive outcomes while decreasing the consequences of failure that are part of the learning process. Below are some situations that show freedom of choice and the consequences of choices that made by human person in all walks of life. First is a biblical situation by Dr. Michael L. Williams. In the garden of Genesis 3 6 to 7, and when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her. And he did eat, and the eyes of them both were opened, and they know that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together, and made themselves aprons. Undoubtedly, the choice that had the biggest consequence in history took place in the Garden of Eden. Eve sinned because she was deceived, while Adam chose to sin despite of knowing better. This demonstrates that we too can be sinned because we are deceived or sinned despite of knowing better. Second, if the government has not increased the teacher salaries as part of the measures to make our system whole again, the teachers have a choice. They can either accept to stay their position or find other employment. This is no different than anyone else in any other position. Let us all remember that when making a choice, a human person must be aware of how his or her choice will affect the future consequences of his or her lives. The application of the virtue of prudence and frugality in decision making is a better option. Thank you for listening our lesson attentively. This time, we are now proceed to the assessment section. Thank you so much for watching I Am Vibes.